Let's start talking about minor scales by describing what they are not, or what we're not going to talk about in this video. And we're not going to talk about minor modes. We're not going to talk about harmonic minor. We're not going to talk about melodic minor. We're only talking about the natural minor scale. So yeah, you could say that natural minor is a mode, but let's just leave that out of this discussion for right now. We'll have a separate discussion about modes later. We're only talking about the natural minor scale. And this is really simple because the natural minor scale is the same thing as a major scale. It's just that you're going to start it from a different place. So I have two scales written out here. I have a C major scale in the first two measures, and then I have a A minor scale in the next two measures. So this part right here is C major, all right? In case you're not clear on these notes, this is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If you start a major scale from its sixth degree, you get a minor scale. So in other words, I'm just going to rewrite the C major scale starting from A. I'm going to get a minor scale. So you can see I picked a different string here because if I started up here on the 12th fret, I would have run out of frets before I got to the end. But it's the same notes, right? So I just picked a different string to play this A. And I wrote out those same notes of the C major scale from A to the next A. This is what the natural minor scale is. It's just a major scale starting from the sixth. Always from the sixth. If you want to find the minor scale that's relative to any major scale, you just go to its sixth and you play it from there. So from A to A is the same notes as the C major scale from C to C, but by starting from a different root, it sounds like a minor scale. Now later when we talk about modes, you're going to see that you can do this on any note, not just the sixth, but the sixth is probably the most important place to grasp this concept first, because that's where the natural minor scale occurs, is on the sixth degree of a major scale. That's the only place that will give you a natural minor scale, is the sixth degree. So if you've been watching any of my other lessons, you will see that I don't talk about minor scales. If I'm giving you patterns for a scale or a pentatonic scale, I only talk about the major side, and that's because I want you to learn the minimum number of patterns required, and that is 5. 5 patterns in the caged system. That's why I favor the caged system, because there's only 5 patterns, and they give you a pretty efficient system to understand the guitar. But I don't bother giving you a new pattern to understand how minor scales work, because I don't want you to memorize another pattern. I want you to memorize the 5 patterns for the caged system in their major variety only, and then mentally transfer that onto a minor scale with the same pattern. Now, I'm going to have to admit that there are a few minor scale patterns that are useful that are not necessarily part of the caged system, but you can definitely achieve everything you need to achieve with patterns using the caged system and then adapting them to minor later. If you find that they don't quite meet your needs, learn a new pattern later. My objective with the caged system is to help you understand how to navigate around the guitar's rather complex interface with a minimum of memorization of patterns. And instead of making up the, filling in the gaps with more patterns, I want you to fill in the gaps by understanding some concepts behind how the guitar's interface is laid out, and also some concepts with music theory. So I think this is a pretty good approach. If we're going to look at other major scales, you are just going to apply the same concept. So rather than dig into running this same example through a bunch of different keys, you can do that on your own. You don't need me to walk you through that. Write a major scale, write it again from its sixth, and there you go. You've got a minor scale. But let's take a look at what this means for the patterns that we've already looked at in our lessons on the cage system. So here we have an E form scale. And we're just going to look at how you're going to reimagine this scale if you want to do a minor scale using the same pattern. So in this diagram, I've notated the roots of the major scale in red. All the rest of the notes are black. If I want to think about how to make this sound like a minor scale, I have to know where the sixth is, and then I have to start playing the scale from there. So you can't go below here, and in a lot of cases you're going to look for the sixth below the root. In this case, because this is notated in G, you would have to go down from the root to the seventh, and then you'd actually be looking at an open string here to play the sixth. It's out of position, so it's not really relevant to our discussion. We're going to have to go up. So that's root, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth. So this note would be the sixth. And then 7, root, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the other one. If you reimagine this scale so that those notes, the sixths, are the roots, you will have a perfectly functional form to be able to play the relative minor scale for whatever key. Like I said in this example, it's a G major scale. The sixth of G is E. So if you wanted to play it exactly where it's written here, this would give you an E minor scale. Most of the time when people say E minor scale, they mean that it's an E natural minor scale. Typically, if you want to talk about some other variation of the minor scale, you describe that specifically by saying E Dorian or E harmonic minor. If I say E minor scale, it's assumed that I mean natural minor. All right, so let's just follow this same logic now through all the rest of these patterns so you can see how that would translate here. Here I've got a D form scale, and all I'm going to do is count up to the sixth. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the sixth. That's my root for a natural minor scale using this same form. And here's the other one. All right, so pretty simple. Nothing complicated about that. Do the same thing up here with the C form. Now in this case, there's plenty of notes below the root in this form, so I'm going to go down to get to the sixth. If this is the root, then that's the seventh, and then the sixth is here. Going up, there's another one there. So those are my two minor roots for the C form. Same thing with the A form. Yes, I have notes below in the A form. So there's the root, the seventh, and here's the sixth. There's my first minor root. Here's another one, and actually there's 3 in this form. So those are my 3 minor roots for the A form. And finally the G form. I can go below. So here's the root, the seventh, there's the sixth, and here's another one. There's a third one. I would say the G form is probably the most common scale pattern for people to learn first when they're learning how to play minor scales. And a lot of people actually will learn this pattern and think of it as a minor scale pattern, although I recommend against you doing that. As I said before, I would prefer that you learn all the 5 forms here as major scales and then mentally transfer that root to a new location like we just demonstrated here. That's all I'm going to say about minor scales right now. We're going to have plenty of discussions about other aspects of minor scales, and we're going to talk about both major and minor when we get into pentatonic scales and the theory behind them. That'll be in our next lesson.